Lost knowledge. Did ancient civilizations understand consciousness better than we do? Atlantis, pyramids, megaliths, sound resonance, the pineal gland, and theories that ancient cultures mapped dimensions of the mind. For thousands of years, civilizations like Egypt, Sumer, India, and Greece explored consciousness not as a side topic, but as the foundation of existence. This episode uncovers ancient evidence of meditation sciences, sound resonance, psychedelic cults, initiation schools, and lost teachings on the pineal gland. Did humanity once possess a deeper understanding of the mind that was later forgotten? Welcome to Famgur Chronicles. In this episode, we explore mysteries of the past. The mystery of ancient awareness. But first, Voyager 1 detected echoes of ancient rituals. Scientists cannot explain what happened next. Millennia before modern science named awareness, unknown architects at Göbekli Tepe fashioned stone circles designed for sound around 9,600 BCE. And artists in the Lascaux caves mixed minerals in pigment palettes, unearthed after the caves were discovered in 1940, possibly to alter perception in ritual settings. Archaeology meets scripture and experiment as we trace the pyramid texts and the Book of the Dead, the Sanskrit hymns about Atman, and the secret rites of the Eleusinian mysteries, where a Kikion brew became the center of debates resolved only partially by residue tests, and later by fMRI studies. The story must move through translation breakthroughs that unlocked ancient voices, starting with the Rosetta Stone in 1799, then Howard Carter opening Tutankhamen's tomb in 1922, and through modern neuroscience milestones, such as the research into gamma brainwaves highlighted in 2004. We will cover Egypt and the Ka and Ba as early models of the soul, India and Atman as consciousness tied to the cosmos, Greece and mystery schools using ritual to provoke awakening, and the field of archaic psychology that hints at methods and models we no longer use. We will interrogate the great forgetting, why practical and textual knowledge vanished, and pursue what-if scenarios about lost techniques that could reshape science, medicine, and philosophy. This program balances fact and speculation, building intrigue while pointing to testable clues and unresolved, compelling mystery. Göbekli Tepe rises from the Anatolian plateau with a geometry that defies simple explanation. The T-shaped pillars, some weighing over 16 tons and standing more than 5 meters tall, form concentric circles that once enclosed ritual gatherings over 11,000 years ago. Archaeologists studying Enclosure D noticed a strange effect. When struck, certain limestone columns produce a ringing tone, as if the stone itself was tuned. Field director Klaus Schmidt and his team documented these resonances, prompting a new line of inquiry. Were these ancient builders intentionally shaping sound as well as stone? Peer-reviewed analysis of the site's acoustics revealed that the circular walls and central columns create natural reverberation, amplifying voices and rhythmic sounds. The concave surfaces and the arrangement of pillars seem to channel and reflect sound in ways that would have heightened sensory experience for anyone inside. Researchers like Linda C. Aniaks have pointed to the parallels between these Neolithic enclosures and later amphitheaters, noting that the curved architecture maximizes acoustic effect, suggesting a lineage of knowledge about how space can alter perception. Nearby sites such as Karahantepe feature carved heads with open mouths and pronounced throats, hinting at a ritual focus on vocalization or chant. At Göbekli Tepe, shallow pits carved into the bedrock have been tested for their frequency response, with some acting as low-frequency resonators. These pits, paired with the echoing pillars, may have created an immersive soundscape, enveloping participants in vibration and rhythm. While the exact calculations behind these effects remain unknown, the deliberate placement and carving of stone, combined with the archaeological evidence of music and dance, from neighboring settlements point to a sophisticated sensory engineering. In the words of one on-site archaeologist, standing among the pillars during a quiet moment, it is as if the stones themselves are listening, waiting for a voice to wake them. The earliest sanctuaries were not just monuments, they were instruments, tuned to the mind as much as to the ear. Inside the Lascaux cave, flickering animal fat torches brought painted walls to life in ways modern eyes can barely imagine. Layers of pigment, each only microns thick, were laid with an attention to chemistry and sequence that continues to puzzle scientists. Panels in the Hall of the Bulls and the shaft scene reveal deliberate stacking of red iron oxides, black manganese, yellow ochre, and white kaolin, with each mineral chosen for its unique reflective and saturating qualities. Raman spectroscopy and XRF analysis have confirmed that artists sometimes applied translucent iron-rich glazes over deep black manganese, creating subtle optical effects that shift with moving light. When torchlight sweeps across these surfaces, the figures appear to shimmer, fade, or even pulse, as if the animals themselves are shifting between worlds. Microstratigraphy and SEMEDS imaging show that the brushstrokes and pad marks were not random, and the orientation and roughness of each layer modulate how light scatters, producing a dynamic interplay of shadow and color. Some researchers argue that these effects were intentional, designed to animate the panels during rituals, with the caves enveloping darkness and echoing acoustics, amplifying every visual surprise. Others suggest the artists may have stumbled onto these illusions through trial and error, but the sheer consistency of pigment layering, measured across dozens of figures, points to a practiced technique repeated over generations. Paleoanthropologists describe the experience as sensory immersion, where art, light, and sound converge to create a visionary environment. The purpose remains contested. Was this a stage for shamanic transformation, mythic storytelling, or collective initiation? Whatever the answer, the technical mastery and psychological impact of Lascaux's visionary panels reveal an ancient awareness of perception and consciousness that continues to challenge modern science and art history alike. Utterance 214, inscribed around 2400 BCE on the inner walls of Unas's pyramid at Saqqara, stands as the oldest known written spell for the soul's transformation. In the tight formal lines of Old Egyptian, the text invokes the kings Ka and Ba, distinct but interlocking elements of being. The Ka, described in these passages as a sustaining force, is called forth from the gods, while the Ba is portrayed as mobile, able to travel between realms, sometimes depicted as a human-headed bird. The spell's language is precise. Verbs of uniting, separating, and awakening repeat in formulaic patterns, each line marked by ritual imperatives. Philologists have noted that the word order and particle use in Utterance 214 create a sense of process, actions performed not just for the dead, but by the dead, as if the soul itself is an operator within the ritual. The passage reads in Allen's 2017 translation, "Raise yourself, O Unas, receive your head, collect your bones, gather your limbs, shake the earth from your flesh," a sequence that moves from reconstitution to animation. Egyptologists like Salima Ikram, reading these lines aloud, emphasize how the K is given and the Bay emerges, signaling a technical distinction between inherited vitality and conscious agency. The mechanics outlined here are not mere poetry. They function as instructions, with specific references to offerings, spoken words, and gestures required to activate the soul's faculties. Later funerary texts would expand on this schema, but Utterance 214 already encodes a system where the soul's parts must be named, nourished, and set in motion through ritual language. The pyramid texts thus operate as a manual, mapping the soul's journey with a clarity and intentionality that suggest a lost science of consciousness, preserved in stone and syllable long before modern psychology or neuroscience. Papyrus scrolls dating to around 1550 BCEE introduced a new kind of funerary manual, now known as the Book of the Dead. Unlike the tightly coded pyramid texts, these scrolls were portable, personalized, and packed with spells, diagrams, and ritual instructions, each tailored to guide an individual through the perils of the underworld. Spell 125 stands out as the heart of this transformation. In its most famous vignette, the deceased stands before Osiris and a tribunal of 42 judges, reciting a series of denials. "I have not lied, I have not stolen, I have not slain," while the heart is weighed against the feather of Mut, the cosmic principle of truth. If the heart proves heavier than the feather, the monstrous Ammit waits to devour it, ending all hope of continued existence. But for those who pass, the spell unlocks a passage to eternal unity with the gods. Papyrus fragments found in Thebes and Saqqara reveal how scribes adapted these rituals for everyone from royal officials to artisans, replacing the exclusive stone-carved formulas of the Old Kingdom with a democratized science of the soul. Scroll conservators today, working under low light and strict humidity controls, piece together these fragile manuscripts, their hands guided by the same spells that ancient Egyptians believed could animate the dead. The Book of the Dead's evolution reflects a growing precision in mapping the afterlife. Its spells operate not just as prayers, but as operational codes, complete with checklists, passwords, and ritual actions. Archaeological discoveries of variant spell sequences and marginalia show that families often commission scribes to customize the order and content, fine-tuned to fit personal virtues or local traditions. The enduring power of Spell 125 lies in this blend of cosmic law and individual biography, a ritual logic that raised the stakes of consciousness, promising not just survival, but a measured, knowable path through the unknown. The discovery of the Rosetta Stone in 1799 by French soldiers near Rashid set off an intellectual race that transformed the study of ancient Egypt. This black granodiorite slab, inscribed with the same decree in Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphic scripts, offered a linguistic key that had eluded scholars for centuries. Jean-François Champollion, working in Paris and drawing on earlier work by Thomas Young, announced his breakthrough in 1822, showing that the hieroglyphs were not just symbols, but a system blending phonetic and ideographic elements. Champollion's feverish notes and public lectures electrified European audiences and opened the door to the first true translations of the pyramid texts and the Book of the Dead. And suddenly, the cryptic references to Ka and Ba, once dismissed as mystical abstractions, could be read in the original language, revealing a detailed map of the soul's journey and transformation. This decipherment revolution fueled a wave of artifact mania, culminating in Howard Carter's dramatic unsealing of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, and Carter's field diaries, written in the dim light of the Valley of the Kings, record not just the gold and jewels, but the walls and shrines inscribed with spells and soul diagrams. Press headlines from London to New York seized on the story, framing the tomb as a lost manual for the afterlife. And Egyptologists pored over every object, tracing Ka and Ba motifs across amulets, canopic shrines, and painted coffins. The interplay between deciphered texts and unearthed artifacts created a feedback loop, each new translation suggesting meanings for the objects, and the objects themselves raising fresh questions about the rituals and beliefs behind them. And that cycle of discovery recast the ancient Egyptian vision of consciousness as something both alien and strangely systematic. Its secrets revealed not by speculation, but by the painstaking work of translation and excavation. Around 1400 BCE, the Rigveda's hymn 9.70 sings the praises of Soma, a mysterious plant pressed and filtered into a milky, intoxicating liquid. Priests chant its virtues as both a god and a drink, crediting Soma with granting insight, strength, and visions that bridge human and divine. The hymn's language is precise and almost chemical, describing Soma purified through woolen filters, its juice bubbling, and its effects felt in body and mind. Yet despite thousands of verses, the actual identity of the plant has never been conclusively established, and the unresolved mystery has animated debate for more than 2 centuries. Botanists and Sanskrit scholars have proposed candidates such as Amanita muscaria, ephedra, Syrian rue, and cannabis, each suggested on the basis of surviving ritual descriptions, local flora, and the physiological effects detailed in the Vedic texts. Patrick Olivelle, translating Hymn 9.70, notes that the text's repetitive structure and imperative mood resemble a recipe or laboratory protocol, calling for precise steps and repeated cycles of purification. Archaeologists have not found direct residue evidence, but the ritual's centrality is undeniable because the Soma sacrifice was the heart of Vedic ceremony and was believed to awaken a higher state of awareness and bring the worshipper closer to cosmic truth. Some researchers argue that these rites hint at a proto-scientific approach to consciousness, using plant chemistry to alter perception, codified in language and ritual long before modern pharmacology. The unresolved botanical mystery of Soma continues to fuel scholarly investigation and popular speculation, and the enduring question remains: was this ancient recipe a lost key to the mind, or an allegory for spiritual transformation? The debate endures as the search for Soma's true nature remains as elusive as the altered states it once promised. Upanishads mapped consciousness. Scholars cannot explain what it reveals. This documentary will trace a single thread from Egypt to India to Greece, asking whether ancient peoples built maps of awareness that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. Start with the puzzle. Written records and ritual fragments from the pyramid texts around 2400 BCE frame the Egyptian Ka and Ba as separable aspects of a person that survived death, a proto-psychology encoded in stone. Move to India, where the Upanishads, composed between approximately 700 and 300 BCE, speak in language that is both poetic and technical, treating consciousness as the ground of being. In the Chandogya Upanishad, a river's journey to the sea becomes a lesson in unity, as these rivers flowing east and west merge in the sea and lose their name and form. So too, the wise freed from name and form go to the divine person beyond all, and Sanskrit phrases samudram gachanti. They go to the sea, and namarupani vyakaravanti. They dissolve name and form point to a process of boundary dissolution. Scholars such as Patrick Olivelle note how rhythm and repetition mimic meditative absorption. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad frames Atman as not this, not that, an ungraspable source of awareness. Centuries later, Patanjali systematized practices into a protocol for self-experiment, where breath concentration and ethical discipline aim towards samadhi, a collapse of subject and object. Then examine Greek mystery schools and initiation rites that stage transformation through ritual, and discuss the Great Forgetting, when libraries, wars, and changing religions fragmented these streams. We will balance archaeology linguistics, comparative religion, and neuroscience, pose what-if scenarios, and follow concrete leads so viewers can weigh evidence for a lost but testable body of archaic psychology and phenomenology. We begin with the pyramid texts inscribed around 2400 BCE, and the idea of Ka and Ba, then travel to the Upanishads, composed between approximately 700 and 300 BCE, highlighting the Chandogya Upanishad and the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and key terms such as Samudram Gachanti and Namarupani Vyakaravanti and Atman. We bring in modern scholarship, mentioning Patrick Olivelle and others who have edited and translated these materials, and we show how Patanjali later organized meditative practice into a reproducible method aimed at samadhi. Alongside textual study, we examine archaeological context, ritual paraphernalia, and the Greek mystery traditions that staged initiation. We chart the historical ruptures that create the Great Forgetting, including conquest and institutional change around the 4th century BC and the first millennium of the Common Era. And we close by connecting these ancient reports of unity to late 20th century and 21st century neuroscience and phenomenology, offering measurable hypotheses and testable practices. The tone is investigative and evocative, inviting viewers to hold both wonder and critical scrutiny as we ask whether fragments of lost knowledge might still teach us how consciousness is organized and experienced. In 2004, neuroscientists at the University of Wisconsin recorded the brainwaves of long-term Tibetan Buddhist practitioners during deep meditation, searching for patterns that could translate ancient descriptions of samadhi into measurable data. Their findings revealed something unexpected: bursts of gamma synchrony above 25 Hz that were not just fleeting, but sustained across wide regions of the cortex. This gamma activity, often linked to moments of insight or heightened awareness, appeared in meditators who reported entering states remarkably similar to those described in the Upanishads: loss of self-boundaries, a sense of unity, and vivid clarity. Meanwhile, a decade later, Robin Carhart Harris and his team at Imperial College London used functional MRI to scan the brains of volunteers under the influence of psilocybin. The results, published in 2012, showed a pronounced suppression of the brain's default mode network, the same circuitry implicated in self-referential thinking and mind-wandering. As the default mode network quieted, participants described a dissolving sense of self, echoing classical accounts of ego loss in both meditative and psychedelic traditions. Carhart Harris has drawn explicit parallels between these brain states and ancient reports of mystical unity, suggesting that the same neural mechanisms may underlie both. The emerging field of neurophenomenology now seeks to bridge these worlds, mapping subjective reports of samadhi onto repeatable patterns in EEG and functional MRI. These laboratory results do not claim to capture the full depth of ancient experience, but they do validate that specific techniques, whether breath, mantra, or pharmacology, can reliably alter consciousness in ways that are both reportable and measurable. As these findings accumulate, the line between ancient practice and modern science grows thinner, opening the possibility that what was once described in parable and metaphor can now be tracked second by second in the living brain. Before dawn, a procession of initiates gathered at the Athenian city gates, each carrying a bundle of sacred barley and a sprig of myrtle. The journey stretched 14 miles along the ancient sacred way, winding through olive groves and past silent shrines, the road itself marked with centuries of footprints. At each station, priests reenacted the myth of Demeter and Persephone, their voices echoing the rhythm of ritual steps. As the sun set, torches flickered along the path, casting long shadows on the stone markers that lined the approach to Eleusis. Upon reaching the sanctuary, participants entered the telesterion, a vast rectangular hall whose thick stone columns and labyrinthine corridors swallowed sound and light. Archaeological surveys mapped the telesterion at over 50 meters per side, with a sunken central chamber accessible only to those deemed worthy. The hall's architecture was not accidental. Its low ceiling and dense colonnades muffled the outside world, creating a cocoon of anticipation. Inside, initiates waited in darkness, the air heavy with incense and expectation. No written record describes exactly what followed. The experience was guarded by vows of secrecy, enforced for nearly 2,000 years. Yet the structure itself speaks. Shallow niches cut into the walls, benches arranged in tiers, and a central hearth, each element placed to focus attention inward. Classicists analyzing the site describe a choreography of movement and stillness, where the senses were gradually deprived, then overwhelmed. The descent into the telesterion was more than a change of location. It was an engineered passage from the familiar to the unknown, designed to dissolve boundaries and prepare the mind for revelation. The initiatory steps, inscribed in stone and memory, hint at a method of induction that worked not through words, but through the careful orchestration of space, sound, and anticipation. In 1978, ethnomycologist R. Gordon Wasson published a bold proposal that the secret at the heart of the Eleusinian mysteries was chemical, hidden in the kykeon, a barley-based drink possibly laced with psychoactive ergot fungus. Wasson's theory, soon joined by chemist Albert Hofmann and classicist Karl Ruck, set off laboratory investigations known as Project KYK. Over the next several years, archaeochemists collected ceramic sherds, soil samples, and residue scrapings from Eleusis, aiming to detect trace ergoline alkaloids, the molecular fingerprints of ergot. Yet despite painstaking GCMS and early LCMS runs from 1977 to 1982, no definitive ergoline peak surfaced. The analytical challenge was immense. Ergoline compounds degrade rapidly, and 2 millennia of burial left only ambiguous organic shadows. Negative controls from non-ritual contexts showed similar profiles, raising doubts about contamination and methodological limits. Experts like Richard Strassman, working decades later on DMT and other tryptamine baselines, noted that even with modern standards, confirming ancient psychoactive residues is fraught with uncertainty. Interviews with archaeochemists from the original Project KYK team reveal a sense of frustration. Every sample run and every derivatization protocol ended with the same result. No conclusive evidence for ergot, but no clear refutation either. The hypothesis remained suspended between tantalizing textual hints and the stubborn silence of the lab. Some researchers argue that new high-resolution Orbitrap mass spectrometry, capable of mapping untargeted metabolomic signatures, might yet reveal what earlier techniques missed. For now, the true nature of kykeon and whether it unlocked visionary states for initiates remains an open question, a chemical cliffhanger at the edge of ancient and modern knowledge. In the 6th century BCE, alternative Greek schools developed their own approaches to the mysteries of mind and soul, often running parallel to the Eleusinian tradition. Pythagoras, remembered for his mathematical legacy, also led a community in Croton that imposed strict dietary rules, forbidding beans and animal flesh, and prescribed daily rituals of silence, music, and self-examination. Surviving fragments and testimonies from later writers describe how the Pythagoreans believed certain foods and sounds could purify the psyche and align the soul with cosmic order. Their regimen included morning recitations, nocturnal reflection, and the study of number as a gateway to understanding the structure of reality. Meanwhile, the Orphic movement, rooted in mythic poetry attributed to Orpheus, spread a doctrine of the soul's imprisonment in the body and its potential for release through ritual purity and secret knowledge. Thin gold tablets, dating from the 5th century BCE and recovered from burial sites in southern Italy and Greece, bear inscribed instructions for the dead, formulas to recite when confronting guardians in the afterlife, affirming divine origins and the trials the dead had endured. These Orphic lamellae, some no larger than a coin, map a journey through the underworld that is both perilous and precise. Classicists such as Mary Beard note that Orphic texts and Pythagorean practices reveal a Greek landscape dense with techniques for transforming consciousness, including fasting, chanting, symbolic mathematics, and carefully staged rites of passage. Unlike the state-sponsored secrecy of Eleusis, these currents offered individualized, portable systems for the care and liberation of the soul, suggesting the Greek toolkit for exploring inner experience was far more diverse and experimental than once thought. In 350 BCE, Aristotle in De Anima mapped the soul as a system of faculties, sensation, imagination, and intellect, each with its own role in the theater of the mind, describing perception as the body's interface with the world, imagination as the storehouse of images, and intellect as the power to grasp universals, proposing a layered architecture that would echo through centuries of debate. Centuries later, modern neuroscience, after long philosophical speculation, returns to similar questions with new tools and frameworks. In 1988, Bernard Baars introduced global workspace theory, arguing that consciousness arises when information becomes widely available across the brain is specialized modules, like actors stepping onto a brightly lit stage. This model, now central to cognitive science, finds resonance in Aristotle's idea of the soul as an organizing principle that unifies disparate faculties into coherent experience. In 2004, Giulio Tononi proposed integrated information theory, called IIT, quantifying consciousness as the degree to which a system integrates information, measured by a value called phi, and tested through computational models and clinical studies to explain why some brain states feel unified and vivid while others do not. IIT's core question, how does the whole become greater than the sum of its parts, recalls the ancient search for what binds sensation, memory, and thought into a single stream. In 2009, Carl Friston's predictive coding model reframed the brain as a prediction engine, constantly updating internal models to minimize surprise, an approach rooted in Bayesian mathematics that suggests perception, action, and even selfhood are shaped by the brain, its attempts to anticipate and correct error, a dynamic Aristotle might have recognized in his own accounts of learning and adaptation. Stanislas Dehaene, drawing on Baars and Tononi, has argued that these modern theories are not mere abstractions, but testable blueprints for experiments, mapping neural ignition, integration, and error correction onto specific brain circuits. The lineage from Deanima to today's neuroscience is not a straight line, but a complex inheritance. Ancient models of layered faculties, modern frameworks of workspace, integration, and prediction, each offering a different lens for the study of consciousness, and the convergence of philosophical speculation and empirical science now provides a research blueprint that grounds the next generation of experiments in a dialogue stretching back more than 2 millennia. In 391 CE, imperial edicts from Theodosius I reached the sanctuary at Eleusis, ordering the closure of its mysteries and the confiscation of ritual objects. Priests and initiates scrambled to preserve what they could, hiding scrolls in ceremonial vessels. But much was lost to fire, looting, and the slow erasure of memory. The suppression of Eleusinian rites was not an isolated act. Across the late Roman world, temples shuttered and oral traditions faded under waves of religious and political reform. Centuries later, the destruction of the Library of Alexandria would compound this loss, scattering texts that once mapped the inner landscape of mind and soul. By the time Renaissance scholars pieced together fragments of Greek, Egyptian, and Indian philosophy, the living thread of practice had been severed. Yet the question lingered: could the empirical study of consciousness recover what ritual and oral teaching had once transmitted? In the 1990s, the arrival of functional magnetic resonance imaging, known as fMRI, offered a new blueprint. For the first time, researchers could watch the living brain in real time, tracking the flow of blood and the flicker of neural networks as subjects meditated, chanted, or entered trance. 3 experimental designs now stand at the frontier. The first, an 18-month pilot at a European university, proposes to recreate ancient ritual settings, including acoustic chambers, patterned light, and rhythmic movement, while recording brain activity and subjective reports. The second, building on archaeochemical protocols, aims to extract and analyze residues from Eleusinian ceramics using high-resolution orbitrap mass spectrometry, searching for degraded psychoactive compounds that might confirm or refute the Kikion hypothesis. The third, a cross-cultural neurophenomenology project, brings together Sanskritists, Egyptologists, and cognitive neuroscientists to code ancient descriptions of altered states and compare them with modern electroencephalography and functional magnetic resonance imaging signatures, known as EEG and fMRI. Each initiative faces logistical and ethical hurdles, including permissions from ministries of culture, contamination controls in residue labs, and the challenge of translating ancient languages into testable protocols. Still, momentum grows. In interviews, a skeptical historian voices caution, warning against nostalgia or easy parallels, while a project lead insists that only rigorous interdisciplinary research can bridge the gulf between lost knowledge and modern science. The tools are ready, the questions sharper than ever. What remains is to act, to design experiments that do not merely speculate, but test, measure, and perhaps revive techniques that once shaped the boundaries of human experience. Today, neuroscience scans the brain while billions still seek meaning in ritual, meditation, and psychedelic research, echoing mysteries ancient cultures never fully surrendered. As AI and consciousness studies accelerate, the gap between what we measure and what we experience grows sharper. The lost languages of the soul once shaped civilizations, and now rediscovering them may decide how we shape our own. The real frontier is not out there, it is within. What do you believe we are still missing?